Thanks for joining us for episode number 474 of the West Tigers podcast. Unfortunately, it is a post-loss edition of the West Tigers podcast, but we've got pretty used to those over the years. The Dolphins 36, the West Tigers 22. We'll start with our usual routine, which is one word to describe that game. And I think sometimes when we do one word and we look at the one word responses on the West Tigers podcast forum, there's a sort of consistency there. And I think there's going to be some variation in what we've come up with in terms of one words. Nick, what have you got for us?
Hello, Joel. The word that I'm going with is fading. I just feel like my my finals hopes are fading quickly, and we've got a fair way to go. We'll do a bit of I'll talk about it a bit later, but there's a few rounds left. I'm worried, Josh, especially. I'm going to angle this at you, but I've had a look. Right, we've got a lot more away games than we've got home games. I know you said you can feel like we're going to go on a run towards the finals, but I can't see it happening. And every week we just get hammered with not just injuries, but injuries to key players. I won't say Jock is a key player, however, he plays a key position, and that severely hampered our efforts against the Dolphins yesterday. So, unfortunately, Joel, I feel like we're starting to fade a bit. So, fading is my one word. And if I can just say a one word on behalf of Aaron, our mate Az, who has been on a few times. He was chatting to him during the game yesterday. His one word is opportunity. It feels like we had the opportunity to jag a win that we weren't expected to get, and we're not winning the big moments in games, which I'll also agree with too.
Mm. Yeah, which is something that we've sort of experienced for a while, haven't we, as a team? And dealing with the adversity sometimes still remains an issue. You know, we drop a ball or we give away a penalty or something goes against us, and typically that compounds with some other play or something that tends to make the situation worse. Hello, Josh. What have you got for us?
I just have two words tonight, Joel. And I'm probably in a very different mindset to Nick. My two words are finals bound.
Right.
While we
Polar
lost,
opposite.
while we lost yesterday, there were a lot of things for me that I thought I was really positive about. I think we had a game where we lost two backs early, and that puts you in a really hard position for your bench rotation and things. But the fact we held in there for 70 minutes, we were right in that game despite our until our forwards kind of ran out of puff. I thought some of the positions where we're got some injuries, I thought some guys really stood up yesterday. Tony Suka
Mm.
on one edge. I thought Sonioni Fainu on the other edge getting two tries. I thought some guys who were in probably where we are going to need to fill some gaps really stood up. Alex Seyfarth again, so I thought the back row were really good. So finals bound. As Nick mentioned, I think we're going to go on a run. We have five games against the bottom four over the rest of the season. We also have the Dogs, who despite winning last night, are a rubbish team and will easily beat them again. That's six of our
Easily.
wins.
Yeah.
That's six of our wins already locked in. So we might win five or six of the next seven. So finals bound, Joel, is my two words for the evening.
Okay. I've got a word for Josh. Denial.
I was going to say delirious. There's another D word.
Oh well, we can disagree. I mean,
Mm.
that's makes the pod more interesting. There is the equation 5 from 10 again to get us to 30 points. Um, but the Dragons played pretty well. Newcastle's certainly not going to be easy. The Bulldogs is not going to be easy. Nick,
You know what I will say though, I do love the optimism,
I love
Josh,
it.
and
It's fantastic.
you have to have optimism, especially as a West Tigers fan. It's been that long since we've played finals. We do have a hope. Like there's a glimmer of hope. We've won. What are we 7-7 at the
Yep.
moment?
Yeah,
So
If
seven
you
out of
get,
seven. Yeah,
we're half so far, and we need to get
we're
half to finish. So
right on track.
we're on track. Yeah.
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 well, correct. Things need to go our way. They're not going our way so far, and they haven't for the entire season really. And to be honest, to get to where we've got to, considering all the major injuries that we have had and players that are out, we have done really well.
Mm.
If we can finish above that 50% for the rest of the year and sneak into eighth spot, I'll be flabbergasted and also very happy. So, Josh, thank you for bringing the optimism, mate, because I'm going the other way. Pessimistic Nick is is well and truly in the building. So let's hope we can turn it around.
Well, let's stay on that same vein before I give my one. And that is West Tigers teams of the past would have dropped their bundle by now. Josh, is that look, whether or not we make the finals or not, we sneak in, we don't sneak in. Is that something that all West Tigers fans can sort of take to the bank to say, well, we faced adversity on a macro level this year, and we've had a couple of days we'd like to forget, but ultimately we haven't cashed our chips in, and we've done that so many seasons.
Yeah, huge adversity. I mean, we've been missing kind of five or six, and again on the weekend we're missing probably five or six of our starting 17, or I guess it's 19 this year, but it's 17 actually play. Five or six of them, and we've won two of the last four. Like the team isn't falling apart. We aren't giving up. We had those couple of bad games, and in previous seasons, those couple of bad games usually led on to a 7 or 8 game losing streak. But actually, we came back and we're beating, we beat the Gold Coast, we beat the Dogs, we're beating the teams we should beat, and that's what gives me confidence the rest of the year. We've been able to beat the teams we should beat, and we play a lot of those on the run home. Um, Look, whatever happens, I think the Tigers can be, especially given with the performances we've seen a bunch of players, I think we can be really impressed with the year. I think at least up to this stage, and given all the adversity, um, it shows a different culture in the team and the club, I think. Are we perfect? No, but I don't
Mm.
think anyone expects us to be. I don't think many experts picked us for the finals at the start of the year, but I think given the injuries to be where we are, and given the how impressive we were when everyone was there, I think we should have a lot of a lot of pride at this stage of how well the club's handled that adversity and managed to come back with some wins in the last few weeks. So.
Mm. Well, let's hope, Nick, that it maintains itself through the year, that we don't go on holidays, and we do keep this fight up. Because I think if you're popping back to preseason training with essentially the same team, I can't see a huge amount of tweaks. I think that gives you something to build on, to say, well, we faced all that adversity, we held together, we didn't cash our chips in. That's something for us to build on in 2027.
I think we've got a great platform that we can leverage to build on for 2027. Yeah, I think the bulk of our team will be the same going into next season. I think that if we do change any positions, it will be around that sort of those depth positions that we've spoken about. So hopefully building up some of those positions like back row, and maybe some strength in the outside backs, or a bit of depth out there. Just to put us in a better position that when we do have key players drop out, that we can not fill them with a like for like, but maybe put us in a bit better position, rather than bringing someone like Coral Heath into a game where I think he had a go, Heath, yesterday, but I think he got caught a couple of times in defence, especially very quickly too. So, look, the platform's there, Joel, and I think with a bit of luck, if we get a better season with injuries next season. And surely we can't have another year as bad as we've had this year in terms of the key players. We've had long-term injuries to Buller and AD and Samuela, and now KPP and Twal.
Yeah.
Then we can do some damage. But the way it's going, it's just looking very bleak. So maybe optimistic Josh can carry me through the next 10, 11 weeks, because I need some help.
Well, on 2027, apparently Jake Averillo has signed for 4 years with the West Tigers, and that is to be confirmed this week. And I think that's obviously going to be strengthening, most likely, our centres, you would think, for 2026, for 2027 and beyond. Of course, we were waiting for the Dolphins game to be out of the way for that to be announced, apparently. So apparently that's on the boil, Josh.
Maybe it's and I'm not saying I've heard anything, but maybe it is 2026 as well. Maybe perhaps it's not just 2027. So
Right.
it is the last week before the
Yeah,
June
yeah.
30 deadline. If we get an announcement this week, perhaps he's coming sooner rather than later.
Okay.
Hope so. Anyway,
That would
I
be
have
very
nothing
nice.
to back that up. But
Yeah,
hope
yeah.
so.
Okay. Just a gut feeling. I've gone back to because this really stands out for me from the game, because I can sit there and watch teams kick goals, kick bombs, blah, 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 every other part of the game. But there's something fundamentally that needs to be addressed in this football team moving forward, and that is winning the collision. Because I don't know why everybody isn't screaming this from the rooftops, but we still look like we more often than not do not win the collision. And the other teams seem to hit the line and push through, and they're pushing through and pushing through, and they get tackled, and they're almost still moving forward when they're playing the ball. That they're gaining that forward momentum. And we in defence seem to really struggle with teams that have got a lot of leg drive and a lot of strength. And so my word is strength. I think we've got to work on our strength. And I think we've got to work on our wrestle, because I think some of these injuries have come from not winning the collision. I think some of these injuries have come from not necessarily being physically prepared as well as some other teams. If you notice someone like Herbie Farnworth, and Herbie's one of the top centers in the game, but every time he had the ball, Nick, every time he ran into our line, he was just about breaking through the other side with his sheer strength. And very, very few of our players are like that.
I watched the Dolphins last week, and I mentioned that in the last pod, and I was very impressed with how they played. And I noticed that last week with how well Herbie's playing. He's busting
Phenomenal.
the line.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he looks like he's got spiders all over him because no one wants to touch him.
Mm.
So I'm not going to deny you there. I think that's spot on. But look, I thought a few of our players bent the line. I was impressed with Bunty. I thought he went quite
Bunty
well. I
played
think he
well.
carried
Yeah.
a lot of players with him with his runs. I thought he ran really strongly. Terrell had some big numbers. I don't have the player stats or the team stats in front of me, so I'm not sure how many meters Terrell made, but I think he carried, for a hell of a lot of meters.
Yeah.
And
once again, he looked better when he just put his head down and just made meters.
And does the work.
Yep.
Yep, he did. Look, Pole and Fano, I'll put Sione in the same conversation. I think they were both good at times, but maybe rocks and diamonds from probably both of them. I think both of them made a couple of crucial errors that I can recall in the game. I think Sione may have dropped the ball at some point on an early tackle count. And I definitely remember Pole, I think it was in the first tackle where he nearly crashed over and scored, and it went upstairs to be reviewed, and they found that he dropped the ball. And
a turning point.
It was huge.
It was a huge turning point. I do wonder on that. The ball kind of like the camera angle we saw, you see the ball kind of popping out. He's lying on the ground on top of the ball. Someone's got to have punched that
Knocked it out.
out.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't just, he's not, like he couldn't move. And I think he throws it out the back of his own thing. So it was interesting that they said he's lost the ball. Well, yeah, we know, but how did he lose the ball seemed to be ignored. But he should have held on to it anyway. So that was a big moment. Agreed.
You know what? I won't knock Sione though. Like he played second row again, and he's more a middle.
Yep.
100%.
So he's playing, wider than he should. And that's by his hand's been forced, right, because of injury. So, and he scored two tries, which are almost identical. Those two grubber kicks that Jerome put through for him were beautiful to watch, and the timing was perfect. So good on Sione for putting himself in a position to do that. I wonder if they maybe worked on that at training during the week, but look, they had a go. You cannot fault the effort for yesterday.
How do you tell if a team is not at the top of the table? How many players have they used in the middle by the middle of June? And we're already at 28 players. So I would think, Josh, that the injuries that we've had need to be part of the review. I think that we need to look at why we have had so many injuries. Like Herbert again. Now it's another dislocate, another shoulder. Like there has to be some sort of, I don't want to quote Jeff Tuvey, but there has to be some sort of inquiry as to why, and it's not just bad luck, I'm sure, that we've had this injury toll, because I don't think we're 100% perfectly ready to go physically for the NRL in 2026 in some ways.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And as you said, there has been a lot of those kind of shoulder and pec kind of injuries, which is a really interesting one. I do wonder, like at the start of the season and probably throughout the season, endurance-wise, we've probably been really impressive and like actually, held on in games and even when we're getting beaten. And I do wonder if that's because they put a lot of effort in the off season on that aerobic fitness and maybe not as much on that wrestling strength fitness. I mean, it's hard to know, as you said, but I think that's something worth looking into because those injuries are in the same areas. So maybe that was lots of running and like they talked about being fitter than they've ever been. And I think that has kind of shown through from an energy point of view over the season, but perhaps that means you have less time on the strength of those upper body kind of muscles. But as you said, it's been a lot of similar issues, and that probably suggests it's not purely just bad luck. So something the club definitely should have a look at going into next year. So.
I wonder if it's a bit of the way the NRL is at the moment, though, with how fast the game is and all the repeat sets and ruck infringements.
Yeah. Oh, look,
inside.
there would be a logic there to be aerobically fit and everything that
Yeah.
comes with all of that, but we're also sluggish at the same time. Like I don't see a team and go, I mean, Buller is quick, but I don't see a team that's just lightning fast in the backs if they get the ball. Like I just feel like we're at a disadvantage anyway. And it's hard because the back line has chopped and changed and everybody's injured and it's hard to get an accurate assessment there. But I'm not seeing blistering fast speed in the backs either. So, yeah, I don't know. I just feel like once again, we caught lightning in a bottle in '05, where aerobically fit and very little injuries and it all came together. But every year we seem to be just off the pace a little bit or incorrectly tuned for the race ahead, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the Panthers have used 23 players. I mean, that
Mm.
probably somewhat points out how fit and strong they are, but
Well,
also,
given origin disruptions in that.
well, yeah. So,
Yeah.
so they've probably used, hardly anyone outside their top 19
Mm.
most weeks. And that probably explains somewhat why they're at the top of the ladder and not going further. Whereas you said we've used, I think, 30 players this year, which is, and we haven't had origin commitments. So,
Mm.
yeah, so that's probably, it's something to work on. I mean, but as you said, like you look across the NRL. There's been like I feel like this year there's been a lot of injuries across the game too, and maybe
Mm.
that's the style of the game. And for teams that aren't Penrith, everyone else seems to have been uh, affected by that. So
Yeah, yeah,
interesting.
true.
Can I just say too how unlucky I think Benji was the 1 week that he decided to give Latu some game time in Cup,
Mm.
that we lost our halfback after, was it 25 or something minutes when Jock had that head clash, and now he's forced out for a week because he failed the HIA
To
test.
be
But
fair, it was your idea to play Latu in New South Wales Cup.
Yeah,
I think I did say that, but as quite a few people did, and I still think it was probably a good move for Latu. But I couldn't believe, when you look
Yeah.
when you looked at who was on the bench, and when it happened, I was like, oh no, Jock's coming off. What are we going to do? Because
Yeah.
off the top of my head, I couldn't remember that Heath Mason was on.
and I
And then,
thought Heath played like that was one of the better
Yeah.
performances I've seen from him in first grade and coming
yeah,
on there. Like I think it was almost not the individual that we had to, Mason and Hamasi having to come on for Herbert, and it was the fact that meant, like I was having a look before, five of our forwards played 70 or 67 minutes or more. The Dolphins only had two forwards who played over 50 minutes, so
yeah,
they've kind of spread 10 forwards over a kind of period. But because we had to put two backs on early, it meant we
Mm.
couldn't play Guy and we couldn't play Murray, and we couldn't even put on the fourth probably bench player until like in Lanyon until as late as possible because you didn't know if you get another injury or you kind of had to be holding on that fourth
Mm.
player
Mm.
because you had no real option. It really puts you in a struggle, and so I thought Heath, I mean he's never going to be amazing, but I thought he had a real crack.
he did play well. The only thing I see a lot of similarities with Heath and also Jock, the way that they defend.
Mm.
Yeah, he's not
They
great.
Well, they're not big. They're not big men, right? So
Mm.
they tend to. I notice Heath sort of runs up and tries to jam a lot rather than waiting and trying to take the tackle,
Correct.
which I get. I'd be pretty scared with 110 kilo guys running at me as well. But not long after Patrick Herbert went off with his shoulder, the Dolphins scored. They ran right past Heath, where he came up and tried to jam in and left Tomasi outside, who sort of had 2-on-1, and he was finding it very difficult to count up in defence. But and it wasn't long after that when they ended up swapping Hamasi out to the wing and brought Stafford back into the centres just to try and
Looked
tighten
much
that up a
better
bit.
once Stafford was there.
Mm.
Yeah,
I think Macassini's going to be great, but I'm not sure at 18 he's up to. I think he could
Yeah.
probably go and learn his trade
he's got
in
a
New
bit to
South
learn.
Wales Cup for the
Yeah.
rest of the year, I think.
I want to
Maybe
talk
so.
about Macassini a little bit in a minute, if that's okay.
Yep.
Josh, we'll get you to have a look at some of the stats for us as well in a second, but I thought I'd run through the one-word submissions from the West Tigers podcast forum. Don't forget, this is the best way to communicate with the podcast, to have your say, to leave your one-word submissions, etc. If you've got things that you specifically want to talk to us about on the podcast, use the podcast forum. Very easy to sign up, and we're always talking about West Tigers stuff there, so you're more than welcome. Cade79, their word was 2027. We can win without injuries. A healthy squad next year, we'll start to see some success. Mike's word is thud. That's us crashing back to reality. Osmo 7, the bench. We needed to use it more as the boys were exhausted, but then there wasn't really much on the bench as well. NatMax 78, steam. We've ran out with 5 to go before half time. We've done that a few times, conceded a try, and that takes away all our momentum. Tigersman, their word was disappointed, not in the team, but just for the team. And that's a good sentiment. That's sort of how I feel. I don't think it's deserved. I think they've tried their guts out, but for whatever reason, it's very, very hard to get the 2 points against, a team that was still weakened, but is one of the top teams this year. Teddy S, their word was polish. We couldn't execute to get the job done. Snake's word was effort. That's all you can ask for when the injury gods screw the side. LFC Tiger went for sliding doors. There were a few key moments, including Pole dropping that ball over the line on tackle 1, and also came back with cursed. There's some bad juju going on for us with injuries. And yeah, there is a bit of, as much as we talk about prep and all of those things, some of it's just bad luck as well, I think. Josh, what stands out in terms of the stats from the game? I play the ball speed. Were we about the same, or did the Dolphins? They seemed their play the ball speed was very good. I thought.
I'm just finding that one, Joel. Actually, ours was faster than theirs,
Was it
Joel.
faster?
So there you go,
Yeah.
3.46 to 3.59.
Wonder how that's measured.
I
In seconds.
Yeah, yeah, but I
Yeah.
really wonder when that starts and when that finishes, Joel. It's always an interesting one that I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Look, what stood out from the stats really across the teams over the whole match was just how even it was. 50% possession,
Mm.
80% completion rate each. They had about 100 more meters than us, but that's not much over a game. Tackle breaks were even. So our play the balls a little quicker. We didn't have many offloads. Normally we play a heavy offload game,
Mm.
but I think we put that away. We saw more than them, but just put that away. Um, Kick defusal was a little better from us. Our effective tackle was a little better. We actually, we both sides missed 35, but we obviously had to make a few more. So we made a couple more errors. That was definitely in the second half. I think we
Yeah.
made 13 errors, but 8 of them were in the second half. So
Mm.
and I think quite a lot of those were probably in that last 15 minutes. And I think that, is probably like looking at the Fox Sport splits it into halves. Our first half we were definitely the better side, and then second half it kind of towards the end fell apart. And I think that probably reflects the fact that our boys were tired. But as I said, the stats overall
Mm.
were incredibly even across the two teams, to be honest. So
Interesting.
yeah, which is probably interesting for us. Unfortunate that it kind of fell off towards the end, but yeah, the stat wise, it was very close.
When you think about the final score, 36-22, 6 tries to 4. So when, like I mentioned before, right, we had Pole drop the ball on the first tackle on the line, which was just about a try. We had Jock head clash, which probably should have been a penalty, honestly, for a high shot, because we've seen that all season and it wasn't.
Yeah.
At the same time, Romy just about slid over the line, and that was very close to a try at the same time in that same play. And then I think it was in the first half as well. Appy put a grubber kick in for Terrell, and if it wasn't for the bloody upright,
Yeah.
with the ball hitting the upright, he could have easily
Strolled
scored.
in. Yeah,
so
easy.
There's potentially 3 tries, which becomes 7 tries to 6 in our favour. So we weren't far off. Like you said, Joel, the football gods are not with us, unfortunately, injury-wise, and maybe bounce of the ball as well killed us a bit.
Yeah, and I think you look at the tries from Fuller and Nicarima right towards the end. Like if our forwards hadn't had to play full games, I mean they were tired forwards missing tackles in the middle. If we had reserves and they're out there, get some time, and I mean I think Terrell May was involved in both, but he played 80 minutes. Like it's just in a game that was very quick. Like it was a very quick game. So yeah, I think there were a lot of, and I think one of their tries, at least one of theirs, came from what looked like a fairly forward pass. So, yeah, we weren't that far away.
Yeah, which sometimes can be just as frustrating as, or can be more frustrating than a heavy like it's kind of like ice a couple of those moments, and you might be able to hang on for a much needed win, but wasn't to be. Echoing those thoughts earlier, I thought Suka did well, and I thought Sione did well. One thing that comes to mind is, are we too and I guess fatigue plays a part here, but are we too reliant on the back three, or in particular, Taruva making meters early in this? Like, it seems that every time the opposition kicks to us, we play the same sort of one hit up from the backs, one hit up. And I wonder if that's something that maybe we could vary that up a little bit by, and I know the forwards is trying to get back on side and they're exhausted and all of those things, but it's just a little bit predictable. And I think sometimes we're struggling to make meters because those guys just don't have that impact necessarily to make good inroads down the field. I think earlier in the year they did. Maybe the opposition teams are catching on to that a little bit. It's a bit predictable, I guess, is the point I'm making. That lumping it out of our own end, it's sort of back, maybe one forward. Typically safe half it was on the weekend, um, and maybe we need a bit more impact and make a few more meters potentially. Nick?
There were a few sets late in the game where Dolphins would kick down the field, and I counted we had 4 backs taking up the first 4 tackles while our forwards were still walking
That's
back on
what I
side.
mean.
And I think you're right, Joel. I think it's fatigue.
Mm.
I think the boys are just playing that big minutes in the middle that they're struggling to get through the 80 minutes, right? So they just took that as an opportunity to stroll back in, on side and let the backs do the work. But I do get it, but I don't know what the alternative is, because if the forwards are that knackered that they can't get back, then the backs have to take those hit ups. So, there's not a lot you can do, unfortunately. But the only other thing is you use your bench a bit differently.
Yeah.
You stack it a bit differently and you rotate through your props. So you're not having Terrell May play 80 minutes, and you're not having, I don't know what Pole's minutes were, but and Bunty as well. Do you have those numbers, Josh, at all?
51 minutes for Pole and 34 for Bunty. So they shared mostly, but there was obviously a 5-minute crossover,
Yeah.
I think, when Seyfarth went off for a 10-minute break. So
Terrell's playing basically a full game.
he played the 80. Yep.
Which is amazing that he can do that. But ideally, you need him playing less, 65 to 70 even, and you bring someone else on for shorter, harder spurts to help with the workload. And
I'd imagine that was probably the idea coming into the game. But once you've got
exactly.
Makasini and Mason on, you can only play
forced.
2 of your forwards. So it was kind of, and then he can play 80 minutes if he has to. So even if the quality drops off in the last 10 or 15. So
Yep.
Makasini, he is clearly injured, but are we ruining him? Are we doing what we, have we ruined his confidence? He's getting physically, every game he gets physically targeted by the opposition. You can see that's on the cheat sheet for them to go after him. Nick, I think you mentioned earlier, I think he needs, and maybe that's what the whole thought about Israel Folau was that allows you to not use Makasini if everybody else is, relatively, available. I just think for his age, and I just think the 12 months that it's been, he just doesn't look the same player that he did even on his debut or, in the trials this year.
I think it's probably a huge wake-up call stepping up into NRL, especially for a young fella. And he's physically big, and he's big enough that he can hold his own, but he's not old enough yet, and he hasn't had the game experience to really, dictate that position, whether it's out the wing or in the centres. I don't think he's been around long enough to even play in the centres. Like, I'd rather leave him on the wing. So if you're going to play, you're on the wing. Like, just get used to the speed of the game and get used to your role out on the edge, and that's going to be it. But ideally, you'd want to drop him back to cup every now and then and give him a spell, in the reserve grade competition and let him learn his craft a bit more. But again, with our injuries, Benji probably hasn't had too much of a choice. And I think at times too, we've needed a bit of height outside, on the wing or even in centres. Like, playing Luke Laley and Sunny Taruva, they're not 2 big wingers. So, and they've been targeted a lot over the first half of the year. So I think it's nice having someone like Kamasi that you can bring in, who's very athletic and very tall and powerful. But unfortunately, on the flip side, just hasn't had an experience yet in NRL.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think he's physically struggling, and that's probably not a shock because he's an 18-year-old kid in his first year of first grade. Like, I think every 18-year-old kid, comes and it's different playing against men, playing against men and really having that. But as I said, we kind of got Tavana and we've got Luke Lallee and we've got Solomone Sakura all in New South Wales Cup. Maybe it's the reality if you give him, and we saw Tavana come in. I mean, he had a lot of, but both of them have not had great outcomes. But maybe you have to rotate them a little and kind of
Mm.
give them a couple of games each because they're all young and kind of while we have injuries, because I'm not sure we have any other options unless
Mm.
we sign someone in the next week, as an experienced outside back. Because obviously Herbert injured now, we'll see Toa move into the centres, I'd imagine, and then you've got that wing spot.
Mm.
But it's not great for him to keep being punished, and I think he
Yeah.
probably can do with some dropping back to reserve grade for his own development, more than anything. So yeah,
So
it's a challenge.
that wing this week, you would think it's going to be between. Is Skelton available or is Skelton injured?
Mm.
Yeah, we don't really know what's going on there. Lily, I suppose Tavana would be in calculations. But what about Sakura, who people are saying he's playing well in New South Wales Cup? I'd missed the New South Wales Cup game this week, but is he a chance, do you think, Josh? Is
He has been playing really well this season and got better and better as the season's gone on. He also played half a year of back row in the Jersey
Mm,
Flag last year, so he's quite good in
he's
defence. Like he can hit. He's a very big boy. Like
he's a big
physically,
boy.
it won't be a
Mm,
challenge. He's a very big boy. And he's been playing centre the last couple of weeks in Cup as well. And he is like he was against Aaron Schupp, who's obviously got a
yep.
fair bit of first grade experience, and he gave him an absolute bath. I mean, we did flog them, but like 1-on-1, he was giving him an absolute bath out there. Um, I think, we've seen what Lally can do, and I don't think there's any, he is a little small, and he's been good in reserve. Like, they've all been good. They've smashed two teams last 2 weeks, but I would give Sakura a chance, bring him up. He's in our top 30. Like, that's what he's
Yeah.
there for. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and physically, he'll be able to handle it. Yeah, I think that's to me, I would have him there just because I think Makasini needs a break. And if he's
Mm,
not 100% fit, don't even
yeah.
put him in cup. Just get him away and get him fit. Like, he's worth too much for us going forward to
Exactly.
be doing that. So.
Yeah. Slogging it out with a
Yeah,
broken
Skelton, that was the
shoulder or whatever it
question.
is. Yeah.
That was a good question,
Mm.
Joel, because he's not
Mm,
playing reserve grade. There's
mm,
no mention on injury lists. Maybe
mm.
we're looking to trade him up for someone, but this is the week. It either happens this week or it doesn't
Exactly.
happen. So
Well, there's
yeah,
been talk about Parramatta, and
yep.
yeah, yeah. All right, we'll watch and wait and see with that.
Mm.
In the post-match press conference, Benji's main message: we've got to move on and regroup. He was asked about Campbelltown. We've only won one of our last 8 there. He said it doesn't matter where you play. The team just has to execute better to give yourself a chance of winning. It's not about the home ground, but that is disappointing for the club. It's disappointing that we can just continue to struggle out there. We've just never been able, or for a long time, we haven't been able to build any momentum in Campbelltown, which is a real shame. What about Jordan? He's been mixing with some celebrities. I don't know if you saw that. He's brushed us because he was with Anthony Daniels and Christopher Lloyd today. So I guess that's fair enough, Jordan. I suppose they're, especially Christopher Lloyd. I'm happy to play a back seat for an A-list celebrity like Christopher Lloyd, but good on you, Jordan. Looked like you had
And
fun at for the Supernova Nerd Fest that he was at.
and that's off the back of playing trivia with Sunny Tarua a few nights ago
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah, wow.
Jordan's on fire.
He's
See,
mixing with a
since
better
he's
class
joined
of
the
people.
pod, he's become
Yeah,
a celebrity. So
exactly.
it's just only for Jordan. Yeah.
Well, we'll just stay here and tell the club how to how to pick players and what to do with them. So this week, give Makasini a rest. Okay, what else are we doing? Keep Latu in reserve grade. Bring Dewey in because Dewey's going to be available.
Oh, I hope so.
Let's all cross our fingers. Alex Twal's available as well,
Hopefully.
and give
Yeah.
Sakura a go.
Yeah.
And
Otherwise, I think it's the same team, isn't it? I don't think there's any.
yeah, I can't see a huge amount
Yeah,
of
the rest
change.
played
And
all right. So
Yeah,
you know what? We've said it a few times. Javon Andrews has got to be close.
yeah, played
Now that
very well again. Apparently,
we've got another question mark in the halves. How close is he?
he
Mm,
was exceptional in that. I mean,
Mm.
Manly weren't a great side, but it was the spine of Attard at fullback, Andrews and Latu in the halves, and then Hayward actually played most of the game at hooker. Hope played a bit of a lock role for some of it, and dropped the ball with the line open. I mean, his stocks are continuing to dive. Um, but Javon, I mean that they were all fantastic, and I thought, but Hayward and Andrews especially, but Andrews was just I think we probably give him to talk about what happened to Makasini. I think you probably do give him the rest of the year
mm,
in Cup unless we're really desperate, just to it's his first year with men, but we have something special. Like he looked,
mm.
I mean, the both of them looked good, and Latu, really looked a half. I think he's probably wasted in that the locker half. But Andrews, he only kicked 7 from 8
Yeah,
conversions, and
wow.
he's got a big boot on him, and he's 100 kilos. Like I think you've got to. I think when to me at the moment, if I looked at it, when Jerome leaves, he's the one. Like and a half pairing of him and Adam is some big bodies out there. So.
Yeah, I haven't seen Javon play a full game. I've only seen the highlight packages, but he looks like a footballer. And I've said that before. You know, he's like you said, Josh. He's a big, tall boy, but he's got all the skills, right? He's an eyes-up footballer, and he, he's got a great passing game, good kicking game, and a goal kicker too. I caught the very end of that match when I did realize it was on Fox, so managed to put on KO and watch the last sort of 5-10 minutes. But actually, really interesting to see too. After the game, Jake Duke was interviewing Javon, and he did say, you know, what's it like playing with Latu? And he said it's fantastic. Latu really knows how to straighten up the play and makes my job a lot easier. So Latu's obviously, we know that he's a good player, and he hasn't had many opportunities in the halves. So fantastic to see him get a run in the halves, albeit we probably did need him in an NRL game. But really good to see the two of those guys playing in the halves together in Cup. I hope Latu's fine because he did cop a stud in the face. So I don't know if you guys saw, but there were some photos post game where he's got a bit of a black eye and a lot of swelling from the cheekbone up. So hopefully he's okay and he's not out next week, whether it's for Magpies or West Tigers. But either team's going to need him. Good player.
Well, it's a good debate as to how do we get you over the next 18 months. What does it look like for Latu and Javon Andrews to make sure that we don't burn them, that we're doing the best thing and potentially setting them up for 28 and above and below and beyond to make sure that they're, the resources that we need them to be when we get there. We've got to stop using Latu, I think, the way that we are. And I don't think there's any point in rushing Javon if he's happy to just keep plying his trade and knowing that he's absolutely 100%, on the conveyor belt, then I reckon that's the best way. God, his confidence must be growing all of the time because he seems to be dominating more and more all the time. So, yeah, I don't think there's any great panic there. I think at some stage it'd be good to just get the monkey off his back and get him in and get him to play 20 minutes in first grade. But let's do the right thing by him if he is such a good player.
The only panic I'll have is whether AD is actually fit enough to play or not. Because I know he had that fitness test, I think it was on Thursday before the game yesterday on Saturday, which he failed. Benji said in the press conference that he failed the last part of that fitness test. So I don't know what that entails, but hopefully he's good enough to go again next week, because if AD is not good enough, then we might have to look at Javon. I don't know what the other options are, because I do not want Heath in the halves alongside Jerome Luai.
No, you'd got to imagine it's Latu would be the first.
As long as his face is okay.
As long as his face is okay. Black eye. It's a black eye, Nick. You can play with a black eye. That's annoying.
Yeah, but the swelling needs to go down a bit. We'll have to stick a toothpick in there to hold his eye open. But hopefully he's good to go as well.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be something to debate and talk about on the midweek pod, episode number 475, of course, coming out after the team is named. And thanks, everybody, for watching or listening in. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe, as always, appreciated. And join us on the West Tigers podcast forum. Thank you, guys. We'll see you midweek.
Thank you, Joel.
Thanks, boys.